Welcome to It Starts With Whiskey. I'm Ryan.
I'm Thee.
And I'm JoJo.
Today we have an amazing guest coming in for you. For today's episode, we're excited to welcome a seasoned expert in relationship health and wellness. With over 20 years of experience as a licensed clinical social worker and more than 15 years as a psychotherapist, our guest brings a wealth of knowledge to the table. She's owned her own therapy practice for 12 years, specializing in helping adults and couples develop healthy, happy relationships. A certified Gottman therapist since 2013, our guest trained directly with Doctors John and Julie Gottman at the renowned Gottman Institute. She is also a certified presenter of the Art and Science of Love workshop and teaches Gottman Level 1 training to other therapists. Her passion for bringing more love into the world through healing and growth is evident in her dedication to this research-backed approach. In addition to her private practice, she's contributed to various podcasts and interviews, including Miranda's Where You Live here in Grand Rapids, and served as a regular relationship health representative for Pine Rest. She's also led presentations, training, and retreats for church groups, military groups, and college classes, making her expertise accessible to a wide range of audiences. With a deep commitment to the science of love and relationships, we're thrilled to dive into her insights and expertise today. Welcome, Kristen Kuiper.
Welcome, Kristen. Welcome. We're happy to have you here.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
What a treat on this afternoon.
This was a long time in the making. I think
It
we've
really-
been talking about it for almost 6 months or so,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Well,
At least
we took a 4-month break, so
even longer.
A little hiatus.
Yeah.
we needed a 4-month break. It's good to have boundaries.
Absolutely. Can talk about that today.
So we are going to switch things up a little bit. Kristen is a big wine fan, and so we have a 1924 whiskey barrel-aged red blend from California that we're going to try that is aged in premium whiskey barrels. So we'll get to the whiskey on the reach around, but for now, what do you guys think of this one?
I love red wine. If I'm drinking wine, it's a red wine, and so I can appreciate that you love a cab.
I do.
love Merlot.
And
But-
I love a good cab, a good dry, full-bodied cab. And thank you for making your adjustments here today to have this
Oh, yeah.
available. It's
Well,
delicious.
Ryan's collection is
It is.
amazing, and as we sit down and try and be as thoughtful as we can with our episode subject and like what we're gonna try and or our person we're interviewing, and Ryan's like, I've got this bottle, and we're like, that's cool. Let's
Pulled
do
it
it.
right off the shelf.
Yeah.
This
I
is
am
really good.
definitely
Isn't it?
getting a lot of oak.
You can taste the oak. There's a sweet at the end. It finishes. But I wanted to ask, what from a person who this is what you drink, what are you tasting now, knowing that it has been aged in these barrels?
Well, I taste, it's a good finish. You're right. I love the finish. And I love like the depth. It's a good amount of dryness for me. I don't like a sweet wine. That's kind of why I gravitate towards a cab. It's great. I think
So-
it's a great selection.
From their website, let's see here. 1924 whiskey barrel-aged red blend with rich, dark fruit aged in a premium whiskey barrel. This liberal wine is layered with aromas of warm vanilla, juicy raspberry, and I was getting some fruit.
That I do taste it
Definitely.
now that you read it.
Yeah. And a subtle hint of maple syrup.
Joe's got the maple syrup.
I wouldn't know this, but when you say it, I'm like, yep.
That's
part of
why
the-
we
yeah,
try to not
yeah.
read them until we like
Right.
taste it first, because
Absolutely.
I think mentally your mind goes to those once you start hearing it, and then they say golden caramel, gentle spice, and toasted oak. And
and
I
it's
get
not that they're always right either, because we don't always agree. We're like, what what is going on with that? Same thing we do with bourbon, same thing. Or other whiskeys.
Okay. So moving on here. You want to tell us a little bit about your background and what got you involved in your current profession?
Yeah, I mean, way back as a girl in high school, I was the girl in my friend group who always gave the advice. Like, my friends would come to me to talk about their relationships, and, all this stuff.
You were the shoulder they cried
I
on.
guess I was, and I just loved that. And I remember in high school, at the end of we were all graduating, and we were spending some experiences together that summer, and we went around the table or the couch or wherever we were sitting, and we just talked about predictions. And one of the predictions they had for me is, well, of course, you're going to be, at that time we said marriage therapist. Now we say couples therapist. You're going to work with couples, and you're going to, you're interested in that, and you're great at listening. And so it wasn't like something new in these recent, years as an adult. It's just always something that's kind of been inside of me, this interest, this curiosity about relationships. And then as I went along in college, I majored in social work, and I had some other interests as well. I was curious about what it would be like to work in the medical setting. And so I had an internship there, and I worked at now Corewell, worked at Spectrum for many years as a medical social worker. So got to work with families and a wide variety of different types of people and different types of situations. And so my interest in relationships just continued from there. And then over the years, I decided, out of the hospital setting, I want to be sitting across from people and talking to them about what's going on in their lives. And, making that transition, became a therapist at Pine Rest, which was just like they threw me any type of person with any type of challenge. And so I really got my feet wet in terms of like working with a wide variety of ages and types of people. But again, that persistent interest in relationships and couples persisted. And so I started seeing more couples in that setting and realized how little I knew. And so I remember one Christmas, I just asked for like relationship books, like just I need to learn. This is kind of before Google and all these search engines were that popular.
Yeah,
Or would have been
when
easier.
books were popular.
Yeah. And so I scoured and I got interested, and I ended up gravitating towards these resources authored by Doctors John and Julie Gottman. I appreciated their approach and their research base, which I can talk more about in a little while. Their concepts, their exercises for couples that just seem so practical and so concrete. The respect that they've earned through their work over the years. And so I just looked it up one day, this training institute. I was like, I think I want to go for it. And so I decided to begin their process of certification to be trained in their method, and ventured out to Seattle over the course of a couple of years, where their institute is based. And at that time, this is back in 2010, they were doing this training with other therapists. They're no longer doing that themselves. They've trained therapists now who do this training. So I just feel really privileged to have, in that time, in that space, to have been trained by them.
Mm-hmm.
So what makes their methods different than, maybe traditional training?
Absolutely, yeah. So the Gottmans, they're known for their research base. So they have over 40 years now of couples research, following and studying over 3,000 couples, close to 4,000 now, over the course of the years, collecting the data, all this observational data, and then analyzing it. So they have multitudes of studies on couples and how couples interact, how couples communicate, conflict patterns, and over the course of time have been able then to develop from all of that research a theory for what makes relationships happy and stable over time. And then out of that theory, they've developed tools and exercises and principles that we can take into the therapy room with couples and help kind of transform their relationship into one that's maybe not going so well, and empower them and help them learn how to improve their relationship.
And all that without the help of AI. They did all that data analysis on their own.
They did.
Wow.
And, and with the onset of AI, it's like, well, how is this going to affect my work? I think it can only benefit,
I agree.
my world. So nothing can replace a human interaction. And something we do know about therapy is something, and one element that makes it very effective is the relationship the therapist builds with the client, but also with the couple. And I see that in my work with couples as well.
So this has taken me down a different path already. I was reading yesterday, I had a message came up, and being in the engineering world, I get a lot of AI stuff. And they're at the show in Vegas right now, the tech show. And they had a robot or humanoid looking person thing that they're now starting to use for therapy in like retirement homes and
Right.
stuff like that. More of like a buddy to talk
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
I think, to
Well,
keep
that's
them.
cool.
But I thought that was kind of interesting.
It is kind of interesting. I want to double back. So this technique, so it's not just for couples that are fantastic. It's
Correct.
You can walk through and you can help people who are having different issues, whether it's infidelity or it's lying or it's whatever, a laundry list of stuff. So you can take couples as long as they both want the help and want to improve it. Then
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. So when a couple comes in, we say, one of you is here voluntarily.
Yeah.
That's a good approach. It has to start with one, right?
At least one of you. But yes, you are, right on. It does take a willingness to look at yourself
Yep.
and to have an openness to becoming more aware of what you contribute and bring to your relationship, to be able to have two people create change. But yes, the Gottman method, it's not a technique per se.
Sorry.
It's like a theory and an
Okay.
approach that includes many techniques and includes many exercises and tools and such. But yeah, we get to help couples move from a state of what we call kind of disasters in relationships to becoming masters of relationships. And those terms come from the research. We've been able to learn what's going on in relationships of these masters where they're doing something together that creates happiness and stability. And then we can also learn from couples who are considered disasters, where they're struggling. They aren't good friends. They're not managing their conflict well. They don't have a sense of meaning in their relationship. But now we have what it takes to help make that shift, which is a really hopeful.
Those are big words.
They are big words.
Yeah.
I was going to ask what
Yeah.
your success record is.
What does success mean?
Yeah, meaning like
Yeah.
how many of those relationships that come into you that are just a disaster. They're on their way to being done.
Yeah.
How many have you been able to turn around with the tools that you provide? How many? And I don't know if you capture that.
Yeah, I don't keep a track record of that.
Fair enough.
However, we do know couples wait an average of 5 to 6 years after the onset of a problem to get help. And that makes a big difference. You know, that time frame.
It's a lot of buildup.
It's a lot of buildup, storing up. It's like you think of wet cement and dry cement. We want to like try to work on things when there's some mobility there and flexibility.
Right.
And but sometimes a success can mean a recognition that this is not working. And I don't consider a relationship ending a failure. Sometimes it can be the healthiest option for the partners in the relationship. And so sometimes couples work involves coming to those terms of acceptance or recognition of what's not working or what it would involve to change things around. And maybe only one person is open to working on that. Or maybe the problems are so pervasive, it's healthier to cherish what you've shared and move forward.
So have you had any cases that come in and you're like, in a very short period of time, this isn't going to work?
Yeah.
And usually is it because one person is just adamant they're not even going to listen and
Right.
come in, or I don't know, a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So like when a couple comes in, what I do with them first, and this is part of the Gottman method, includes a very thorough assessment of the relationship. So the first several sessions are purely getting to know more about the relationship. So we have a session with the couple together that involves like a whole history of their relationship. And I get to learn how they tell their story. Where does it turn negative? Where are the fractures? How far back do those go? Who voices the complaints? How do they talk when each other are in the room about why they're in the room? And then I meet with each individual separately to hear more of their own perspective, where they might often say things in an unedited way that they couldn't at that time say, with their partner sitting next to them. And then we do a thorough online relationship assessment. So that's just another way of gathering information. And then I get to tell them, here's what I see. This is what I think would be productive in terms of like whether or not couples therapy is a good fit, whether or not I'm a good fit. And then we go forward from there, and they get to decide like if we're a good fit in working together, and if I see that their challenges they come in with are workable, are treatable, depending on a lot of different factors, then I propose a plan. And then they get to decide whether or not they want to continue. So from that point on, we move into really active work together. So that really helps.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's
yeah.
really interesting that you open the door for like, is this going to fit? A friend of mine was just, I don't know, she calls it like interviewing counselors,
Yeah.
you know, for her
Yeah.
own therapy. And, you know, she'd been seeing the same person for a number of years, and she just came to this realization, like, just with one moment. And it was the way the therapist phrased something, like, was almost like, what are you crying about that for? So I'm definitely abbreviating the story here. And she took 2 steps back, and she's like, I thought we had a different kind of relationship. Like, maybe this isn't working. And so, and I know a variety of other people who have also had to kind of revisit whether I'm in the right therapist's,
Yeah.
you know, purview. So I think it's really great to include that as a, for a couple, right? Like, do you think we can actually make this work happen?
Absolutely. It is so dynamic, and it
Right.
involves the therapist as well. So yeah, I mean, if you feel like you're dismissed or unheard from the get, or, you know, as you're becoming more and more vulnerable, that's a tough experience. But yeah, that fit matters so much.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So as you're doing that evaluation when they come in initially, are there traits that you're looking for, or, you know, something around that that's like, okay, this is a good fit, or, you know, there's a good chance this could work out?
Yeah, in terms of goodness of fit with the couple and myself, it's really important to experience like some kind of openness each partner has to what I might have to say,
Fair enough.
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
How thick is that wall you have up?
Exactly.
Let me see if
exactly.
I can chip something up.
And do I want to spend do I think it would be productive? It's different working with an individual. But when you work with a couple, do we want to spend years trying to work through that, what we call defensiveness? Mm-hmm. So the presence of that, or how kind of pervasive that is really important in terms of that work being productive. Yeah.
I noticed infidelity was one of the subjects that you mentioned. And obviously that's definitely a relationship issue a lot of people have some experience with. Do you find generally, like, I have to figure out how to articulate this question. So the partner that conducts the behavior
Yeah.
to cheat.
The partner who betrayed the trust.
Right.
Yeah.
And when, you know, some people say it doesn't benefit you to come clean to your partner. I mean, if you're just trying to get it off your shoulders, like, you know, what is the benefit of your partner knowing? Like, maybe that person cheated and they were like, oh, I love my partner, I screwed up, but I can't move forward without being honest, or something like that. Is that like a really valid thing, that people only do that for their own, I don't know if I said that question
Peace
right.
of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I can say the couples that I see, usually there's been a discovery or a disclosure. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's because to carry around that information about your own behavior or your own choices really impacts intimacy and closeness, and can really add to a lot of distance sometimes, or tension. So you carry around, for some people it's guilt, like that's hard to carry that and be in a intimate relationship. And so often that's where we'll start, is like there's been a discovery or a disclosure, and so there's a lot of feelings that come with that.
Oh, I bet.
And a lot of questions the other partner may have. And some of those questions aren't helpful. We could get into this more in detail if you'd like to, but some of those questions, to have them answered, aren't going to be helpful for that relationship to move towards healing, but some of them are very important to have answered.
Yeah.
But the one main ingredient, if you're wanting to heal after a betrayal and you're working in therapy to do so, we need to have some type of remorse present. So you really cannot move forward in healing and recovery and rebuilding your relationship if there's not a recognition of how your own choices or behavior hurt or impacted your partner. You know, we just can't move forward in that space.
I feel like I got specific on us. I'm
You,
sorry
you
about
can.
that.
You can. We can go there.
Well, there's so many different types
Yes.
of infidelity, right? There's the physical or the emotional. It really depends on who you're talking to. And, in my mind, physical is way worse. But in other people's minds, it's emotional is way worse. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely for me trying to kind of figure that out and why this person feels this way about that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to be with somebody who wants to be a little cheater,
Right.
like that kind of cheater. But they're both bad, and they both tell a story, and it's just really trying to understand both and how they impact the different partners.
Yeah. I mean, we all get to decide our own limits of acceptance in a relationship. We get to decide that. We get to have that. And that comes from who we are and where we've been
Yep.
and what we want. And that's something to respect in yourself and learn how to talk about with the person that you're with, those limits. But, infidelity is a breakdown of trust.
Yep.
And really, when we talk about trust, the definition of trust is your own sense of confidence that your partner's thinking about you and the decisions that they make. And so it's like having confidence that your partner has your back. Mm-hmm. So you can see there's breakdowns of trust that are really explosive, like infidelity or, a big secret that's been disclosed. But there's small, everyday erosions of trust. Maybe your partner isn't really investing or being curious about you, or you're trying to connect and they're just not. We can talk more about this concept, but they're not turning back towards your attempts to try to connect. Those are considered erosions of trust. And so over time, when that's a state or that's happening in a relationship, it becomes much more vulnerable to these larger breaches of trust. So it really is all about that,
Yep.
and knowing where your limits are. And that's okay. It's like you can have your limits of acceptance. You don't have to have agreement with the other person, with your partner on that. It might be a deal breaker,
Yep.
if there's not alignment there.
Understood.
Yeah.
So do you ever get couples, and I'm just going to throw this out there, but like healthy couples that come in and want to grow their relationship, even though they may not have any underlying trust issues
Yes.
or anything like that?
Yes, this is such a treat for me. I have premarital couples. So I see couples who are like, we're going to commit or get married, and maybe they're going through a formal process. So I do some partnerships with some area churches to provide that. So it's more of like a requirement. So it's a certain set of sessions, and we go over different educational things and practice, and it's fun. But then I end up seeing couples, maybe a couple who is thinking about having or trying to have a baby. They're like, we just want to make sure we're in a good spot, before we go through a big transition. I can think of a couple that I saw years after doing premarital with them. So we had that connection and they returned. But yeah, some couples come in and they say, our problems are not crises. We just are feeling a little off, or we're a little more lonely than we used to be, or, we're just so busy with the kids. Or another big point of life to take a look at your relationship is like the empty nest. It's like we've been partnering as parents, or so, raising this family, and maybe along the way we didn't realize it's not anybody's fault or like malicious. We just haven't really turned towards each other in the extent that we feel like we're that close anymore. And so that's often where dissolution happens. It's a spike in the divorce rate.
Yeah.
Is empty nest.
That's interesting. That was
Yeah.
something we had talked about possibly bringing up, and it's like, do we save this for another episode? But like, and I'll just speak from my experience. I know with both of our kids out of the house now, and Eve coaches, we've talked about that before, like from November to March, she's gone at 5 a.m. and we have a unique situation because we work together, but we don't see each other like very often because she has her own little role. I have my role, and we're in different worlds, even though we're 12 feet apart. But I know, like with me, when the kids leave, when they're here, and I love my kids to death, it's like that messed up our little jive we had going on.
You had a vibe going.
We had a routine.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
now the kids threw the routine off when they're here, and I love having them here. And then after a while, it's like, okay, kind of looking forward to having a clean house and a quiet time. But then they leave, and it's like, oh, I want them back. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of like a roller coaster of emotions.
Totally. Yeah. And like that stage of life, there's so much coming and going. And I think for couples too, like those transitions, when the kids come and when the kids head back, it's like your relationship, there's a possibility there for some resetting ritual. Like, how do we get in touch again after hosting them for a month?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
and this was something I was thinking about this morning. The one thing, you know, and even I think have a great relationship. And like I said, not many people can work together, live together, and not have a lot of issues. But one thing that did take me a while to get used to was the whole coaching thing. Because when we first got married, you know, like I said, she's gone from 5 a.m. till sometimes 10 o'clock at night when we have swim meets and stuff like that.
She's
And
busy.
She is a busy individual, but it took me probably 5 to 10 years to get comfortable with the fact that she's spending her time with other people, you know, like outside of,
Her priority,
Her-
what it felt like.
yeah. Yeah, because I mean, it ties up a lot of time. She has 20, 30 kids that she's raising at the pool,
Yeah.
and it took away from my time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But now I'm at the point after 25 years, it's like I kind of enjoy a little bit of my time. And we both travel a lot, different times, and, you know, independently and sometimes together for work. And I don't know, it's working out. So
Yeah.
I feel very fortunate that we've had that.
You found a way to still have your couple time together.
Yeah.
It looks different than it would if she didn't coach or was, you know, her hours of the day weren't so spread out.
Right.
It's a common challenge for coaches and families, for busy executives, dual career couples. I work with some couples who live apart in different cities, couples who are bicoastal, so live on
Wow.
different coasts. You know, you can create what you want and you
Yeah.
can build what works. But that does take kind of creativity and like learning what your aligned priorities are and how to make that happen. We have all those other factors going on.
I see like a lot of compromise, you know, like being pretty important. Like you don't have to give up what you need, but finding a way to recognize what your partner needs is also important, and
Yes.
finding a way to come together on meeting both of your needs. Like Eve totally supports Ryan finding this hobby, like doing a podcast with his two friends, or having a interest in, you know, trying different whiskeys and stuff. And so I see a lot of support, and then vice versa. Ryan supports Eve and all of her coaching, you know, just to use you guys as the example, like the way you guys support each other. And then you come together and, oh, look, we've got an hour. Let's go get dinner together. Prioritize that. You know, like I see that. That's really recognizable in your relationship.
Yeah, it's so true. Like when you have a trust that you're accepted for your likes and interests, and you have that acceptance in your relationship, it really creates a lot more flexibility. You know, if you don't feel accepted, you're going to become more rigid.
Restrained.
Yeah. Yeah. So like you're describing, there's trust there, there's support there, there's acceptance there, and then there's an ability to be more flexible and say, what do we want? You know, what's the we part
Yeah.
where we can say, let's compromise and each give up something in order to gain something that's really important to us.
I saw something on your. I had breakfast this morning with a friend who just recently broke up with someone they were in a relationship with for 7 years, I want to say. So she's going through that, like renewing herself and like getting energy, and still missing her partner that she broke up with 2 months ago in a way that you know is part of her process. And I was, while researching and kind of understanding your background a little bit more, I found a statistic, and I can't find it. It might be on the Gottman Research Institute website, but it said realizing, you know, that 50% of marriages succeed is something to recognize, from that premarital counseling to the when things are good to the when things start to go poorly. And I shared that with her, and I was like, you know, like, I don't know, sometimes we beat ourselves up, because she had just said something like, this was my fault, you know, and I was like, sometimes we beat ourselves up, and like, But if it's a 50%, is that so? I say all of that. You mentioned earlier while you were kind of telling us about yourself, you said it used to be called marital counseling, and now it's called couples counseling. Would you
Right.
think like that's kind of like the shift in like the American social culture, like just recognizing that there's various forms of couples?
Absolutely. There's couples of all sorts, and it's tough to track some of those stats now
Oh, for sure.
because we can look at marriage rates and divorce numbers. And so that's where we get that information. But really, we don't know. It's probably more than half.
Yeah.
But one kind of concept I learned along the way I thought was really cool is that, like, in our lifetime, we probably have like 3 to 4 different marriages or committed relationships, sometimes all with the same person. And, we
Interesting.
recreate as we go along, and maybe there's some big breakdown and you have to
Yeah.
rebuild, or there's life events that affect how you are together and what you each want. And so you adjust to that. But sometimes we have 3 to 4 different intimate relationships in our life with different people,
Right.
and that's okay too. It's like knowing when to have an ending is important.
It's funny you
Oh,
said
wait.
that. Wait. No, let me quick, because don't do it.
Go for
We're
it.
on a roll.
Go for it.
So I just have to say a funny story that probably has nothing to do with the counseling, but my great grandmother in her 90s got married and divorced from the same man 4 times in her 90s in a period of 10 years. She died when she was 102.
Wow.
Oh
And
my
I
gosh.
was like, who in their 90s is still trying to figure all this out?
There was some personal
Go, Grandma.
revolution going on for Grandma.
Okay,
That's a great
cue
story.
it, Ryan.
Okay. See, you had said reach, and that got me thinking I needed to hit the button.
Hey everyone, it's time for a reach around.
Okay. So, Joe, it's your turn to do the reachy.
What do we got, Ryan? What's our reach around this afternoon?
So I
And
came
just for our
across-
listeners, Kristen is also trying
I am.
the bourbon this
I am
afternoon.
partaking. Yes.
She
Thank
is.
you
I
for
realized
the
I probably
opportunity.
poured you more than you wanted, but
You don't
it's
have
all
to drink
it's
it.
all
May
good.
just be a taste.
So what we're doing for our reach around, we're doing a Redwood Empire Screaming Titan, which is a weeded bourbon whiskey out of Redwood Empire out of California.
Why did we pick the Screaming Titan, Ryan?
I don't know. It may lead to something later in the episode.
Couples counseling.
I could take a couple guesses there.
See, I mean, we got to try. There's not a lot of whiskeys out there. We tried to get a whiskey called Tomfoolery because we thought, that could
That's
apply,
fun,
but
too.
it's
It
only
could.
sold in
It could.
Ohio.
So this Screaming Titan is 198 barrels, and that they produced of it. It's 4% malt, 5% rye, 61% corn, and 30% wheat. So that is 5%. So it's a little low rye for Joe. But what do you think?
So I'm over here sneaky
Yes, you
with
are.
the water. I'm like, Kristen, try the water. I wanted to see how it opened up. I felt it took away the burn.
Yeah.
But I actually really enjoy this. The taste is really good. It by smell, I was like, holy moly! It smells like it's like 120 proof.
The ethanol.
Yeah. But it's super good. I really like it.
See, I got sweet. I mean, I smell the strong.
Yep.
And I'm getting a sweet, but it's hard to overcome the strong.
So the nose on this, according to their website, is nectarine, sweet tea, and apple blossoms.
Really? I would never know that.
I don't think I've ever smelled apple blossoms.
Nope.
See,
That's not no.
that's why we do what we do.
Yes. The water did open it up because I took a little
Yep.
sip before and
I
after.
saw you. I wanted you to
Yes.
try it.
I'm like, what do I do with this?
And then
That's
I'm
how
like,
illiterate I am when it comes to
No,
this.
you're
but-
okay.
yeah.
And then, or you could use an ice cube, but
Yeah.
yeah, Ryan's got the fancy little water dropper, but it's really nice. It's actually, it's enjoyable. I didn't have a stink face at all, not once.
Okay. I didn't see because I'm not watching the video. But on the palate, they say honeycomb,
Yeah.
flaky pastry, and peaches and cream.
I can get the honeycomb. I felt inclined. Peaches and cream. where
I'm not
I don't
picking
understand
up,
where
I'm
they
not
get this
picking up the
stuff.
peaches.
This is like fancy food. This is not science based. Description.
It's purely subjective.
And all this comes out of a piece of wood.
They probably ran it through Chat GPT.
Yep. Yep.
Based on the ingredients I put into my whiskey, come up with what it should taste like, smell like.
It does have a sweeter taste than
It does.
I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. I mean, from the smell, you wouldn't pick up the sweet, but it's very good.
And it's only
enjoying it.
96 proof.
It's nice.
good.
Means you can have more.
So you can switch back to your wine
I will.
at
I'm
any
waiting.
time.
I've already planned on that.
How close is the wine to me?
How close is the wine?
Too far.
Too far.
Damn.
But once we get moving here, I will go get you a glass, Joe.
Well,
So
I have a question. No, I have a question.
Yes.
So based on what we were just talking about, how we are people who are at an age group where our parents are aging or they've passed away or they have ailments, right? How do we deal with partnering up with parents who are they're getting sick? How do you know how much to when say you're not married, say you live apart? How do you know how to insert yourself and what you can do and what you can't do to help your partner navigate through an ailing parent?
You mean being the partner
Yeah.
who doesn't have the ailing parent, but your partner does. And it's a time when you have aging parents and health events happening, it can be a real demand on time,
Yep.
energy, emotional energy. And so I think, being in that, I would call it like a supportive role, involves providing that space for your partner to be able to talk about how this is going for them. It's part of their world. It's part of their inner emotional world. So to provide that kind of conversational space, but then also asking, what do you need? So John Gottman calls the recipe for connection 2 questions. How are you feeling and what do you need? I think that applies, it's very simple, but it applies across a lot of different relationship dimensions because it's a respectful question. Like you're a separate person from me. You have your own thoughts and feelings and ways you're experiencing all of this. So to show you that I care and to turn towards you and accept this is going on in our life together involves that kind of exchange.
Okay.
Family dynamics can be really challenging with an aging parent. How much to help with siblings, or if you're an only child, like there's a lot of complexities there.
What about not just looking at it? I'm sorry if I interrupted. Not just looking at it from a point of being supportive, but also making sure that you're also cared for in the relationship and you're not set aside or not prioritized in the way that you also need.
Right. What do you need?
Right.
How are you doing with
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
This is now a part of our
So-
lives for this season.
So vice versa, that
Yeah.
person should be able to turn to you and say, how do you feel? What
Exactly.
do you need?
Right. I mean, this is a major thing in a life together, right? An aging parent. So how are we talking about this? Each of us has our own perspective and our own experience of this. So, it's the how is really important. And so is like what you're talking about, but how are you talking about it with each other? Are you telling each other what they should feel? And
Yep.
how they should handle the
Yeah.
problem or the situation? That's not going to go over really.
Right, because we're all different.
We're
we
all different.
handle things differently.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah.
all have different backgrounds.
And one
upbringings.
therapist I really respect, he says, his name is Terry Real. He says, the need to be right is the first thing that needs to go
Yep.
in
That's
a
a good
relationship,
one.
right? It's such a good concept.
Yeah.
It's like, and how are we doing with the need to be right? It's a good thing to ask ourselves, right, as we go through these stressful times. So to not determine what you think the other person should be feeling or should be doing or should be experiencing is a good start, too, to have that conversation, be more loving and helpful. Yeah.
Are there any traits that you see or are common with like healthy couples? I
Yes.
mean, other than obviously
probably part of the research.
communication.
Part of the research.
The
You got it.
masters,
The
right?
masters. So yeah, I'll talk about like the masters of relationships. What are they doing? We can watch them hang out on a Saturday afternoon and collect the data on how they're relating. We can watch them have a conflict and collect that data and see what's going on there. But primarily, they have a strong friendship. And friendship includes passion, romance, physical intimacy. But the core of a happy, stable relationship is a strong friendship, which basically means I like you and I'm interested in you. And I have ways of like being curious about you and showing you that I cherish you.
Yeah.
Do you see how that can wane over time? Just not because you don't care or don't cherish, but just because there's so many other things in competition for your time. And sometimes we forget the importance of these small, everyday opportunities to turn towards and be curious and show our interest. So the masters have a strong friendship, and they have ways of growing that friendship and nurturing that friendship. And then another quality of the masters of relationships is when they have conflict. So we're not looking to eliminate conflict. The goal is to transform it and to manage it differently. But when they have conflict, they're not trying to make the other person like them. But their conflicts are more gentle, and they stay out of escalation, or what we call flooding, where your brain switches function and you go into fight, flight, or freeze. We're protective of ourselves and we're trying to, just make it through the conversation. And then that's often when people say things they don't mean or shut down. So the masters of relationships have a way of moving through conflict discussions that keep it kind of back and forth, gentle, and out of escalation. What that includes is all of the feelings. You can be angry. There's no evidence that anger is dangerous. It's the behaviors that can come with the expression of anger that can be dangerous. The emotion is not the problem. We want to encourage all the emotion, but how you express that. The masters do that in a way that owns how they're feeling, owns their upset or their frustration or their hurt. And then another quality of the masters is they have what we call a sense of shared meaning together. They have a way of living together that has clarity in terms of what the overlap is for them in their values or in their beliefs sometimes. Maybe they have shared goals, hobbies, not all of it, but not none of it. We want to nurture, like, what do you enjoy together? Where's the we? And then also a part of that is how you support each other's dreams that aren't your own. The masters do that well. So there's these three kind of areas of a relationship: friendship, conflict, and shared meaning. And within those different systems in a relationship, there's ways to kind of heal and grow. And so the folks that are the disasters, where they're struggling in those areas, we look at how they can improve that. But we learn so much from the masters, like when they're having a conflict, how they go back and forth. And they don't criticize each other. They don't label, they don't attack. They talk about how they're thinking and how they're feeling. They don't get defensive. They don't kind of counterattack and try to point out the flaws in the other person's perspective. They really work on not disengaging, but staying in that state where they're not shut down. And then what the masters do is they stay out of what we call contempt. Contempt is, I'll define it in a moment, but it's considered, like John Gottman calls it, the sulfuric acid of love. It's very harmful. It's when you put yourself above the other person. So, and you're looking down on them and you're acting superior. So, you're right and they're wrong. You're logical and rational and they're just ridiculous. It's where insults come from. It's where kind of degrading comments come from. It's where shaming the other person comes from. And that's just like, the masters don't do that. So that's an important piece to remember. We can talk more about those four dynamics there that I just talked about that are really distinguishing the masters from the disasters. But yeah, that's kind of it. They're good friends. It's like more or less I like you. I choose to be with you.
Yep.
I'm committed. So I'm not comparing you to other people, whether they're real or imaginary.
We I watch the Bridgerton a lot, and I'm sitting there and I looked at her. We were talking the other night and I said, there is no way in hell I could have lived back in
then.
that day.
day.
What was that? Feudal?
Those days,
Yeah.
whatever. It's like, that was not me.
Yeah, not you. Not you.
No. And
Yeah.
even the poor women during that time, it's like, you must go put yourself out there. And,
Right.
you know, not only the way they dressed, but the parents or mother is like, that's the guy you need to go after. And he has money. It's like, you'll learn to love him. But at this point,
Wow.
we're going for money.
Yeah, love was not in the driver's seat back then.
No.
For sure. And women didn't have a lot of choice or influence in that time. You know, it's really important to have a mutual ability to have influence in a relationship. And so just very different experience of that for women in that time, for sure.
It's definitely been an evolution. I remember a lot more growing up in the 80s, and, you know, like, people didn't divorce. They stayed together, even though it was miserable for them, miserable for their kids, whether it was, I'm not saying it was religious, but most of the time it was a religious belief system that made them do that. And I don't know statistics, but it just feels more like people are willing to explore the possibility to what you said. Like, a success could be that you should walk away because it's healthier for the both of you. It's healthier probably for your kids if you have kids, like at that point in time. It's such an interesting concept. I can't imagine living back then either, Ryan. Like,
Right.
I would have been
Commitment at all
like
costs.
Joan of Arc and probably been in trouble for rebelling.
What if you have a partner or someone who's a runner? Like, so the conflict arises and they run and they don't like it. They run. They tell fiblets to try to get out of it. Okay, that's me.
I wasn't going to say anything.
I guess I'm
That's
cutting
okay.
that one out.
You don't know. You know what? It's. I am a runner. I hate conflict. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know if that comes from just how I grew up and what I see, but I don't like it. And here's Joe getting vulnerable. But I struggle. I get nervous. I don't know what to do. I start telling lies, and I find myself lying, and I don't need to lie. I don't do anything wrong. I don't know what to do, and I scramble.
It's not an uncommon way to approach conflict. Okay. And somehow along the way, a person learns it's not safe to be open, or working through it hasn't really proven to be successful. And so we armor up, we get scared. And one way of acting on that is to flee. You know, and so a lot of times working with couples, there's one or both of them that are more avoidant of conflict that way. And so we look at where does that come from and why and all of that, because there may be opportunities there to individually work on that. But in terms of a couple, what we do in therapy is we look at having, like, providing and creating a safe space in the room to learn how to stay. So we take lots of breaks, lots of pauses. We keep it real slow because, you know, our emotions also need that space, you know, to keep up with our thoughts and, you know, our ability to verbalize what we're experiencing. Sometimes it's such a strong instinct and urge to get out of there. That, you know, when you're in a therapy session and you aren't going to physically leave, you might shut down. You might be there, but not be able to access what's going on. And so I can say from my perspective as a therapist, it just takes the time to create that safe space and move real slow, because you're working most likely with a pattern that's been there for a very long time. And it's going to take evidence of instances where you can feel safer and less scared to work through it differently. It's not like, oh, I learned how that could be different, so now I can just change that.
Yeah, it's not.
You know,
that
our
easy,
bodies
right?
don't work that way. And so it's definitely a process, but
Gotcha.
creating those instances where things are slowed down and you know you're not going to be ambushed or smothered or attacked, that matters too.
Fair enough.
So can your partner get on board with that? Right?
Yep.
The process.
Thank you.
Learning together. Yeah.
So, and this was one I had thought about a while ago. Like after COVID, I'm guessing there was a big influx of patients
Yes.
Or
through COVID.
through COVID.
Yeah.
Being locked up in a house for almost a year or what, I try to block out how long it was now, but
Long time.
I'm sure there were quite a few couples that learned a lot about themselves and their relationships
Yes.
during that.
COVID was insane because in the matter of 24 hours, therapists who had never used virtual methods for their practice, including myself, our entire practices were online. It was a scramble. And we were all going, as therapists, all going through the same experiences of stress and like fear and uncertainty and the trauma of all that individually and collectively alongside our clients. So 2020 was, besides this last year, 2024, I don't know what that was about, but 2020 was my busiest year. For couples who really did well because they had a lot of buffers. They had good friends. They had jobs that, that were purposeful or positive for them. They had hobbies. Imagine all of those buffers being taken away. And you are, close up with your partner and you're stressed and you're scared.
Nowhere to go.
Yeah. And so we think of those buffers as like protective factors. Those can be really good for a relationship, to have the breathing room that then couples didn't have. And so meeting with couples virtually, like while they're in a closet, their kids are in online school in the other room and they're like, this is the only private space we have. There's so much stress. And the typical way we might work with that, we couldn't anymore. And so a lot of it was just like triaging, kind of going one day at a time. For some couples, it surprised me. They really did really well. Because it's like, oh, all the extras, that were stressful or extra commitments or like all of the things they were saying yes to that were kind of pulling them away from each other, they were able to bond in a different way. So it was really interesting for me to see what couples struggled and what couples, in some surprising way, really grew a lot through that time.
I really appreciate that, at least in my life, and I can't speak for everybody in the entire United States, but
Why not? No, I'm just kidding.
You can try.
I could try it. I feel like it might be true, but I feel like therapy has lost that that norm of mental illness, sort of like the recognition that therapy can be just partly maintenance. It can be part of growth. It doesn't have to always be about a major defect that you have to fix, right?
Right.
I think therapy probably was, I don't know, 3 decades ago-ish, something like that. So it's so cool to listen to. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that in COVID, so I'm not trying to say that, but it's so cool to know that people could call and reach out. That was something people recognized as a tool. Hey, partner, I'm gonna kick your tail today, so we need to call and have we need to set something up, and we can't leave this house, so we need to talk to somebody. And kudos to you guys in your profession to adjust to the needs of what was going on then. I think that's huge because that was a big adjustment that year.
It was huge. I would say.
And how much it's changed after, too, because now that you can go back, how much of your business is done online?
Yeah. A lot of therapists, including myself, we do hybrid. So
Yeah.
I do several days telehealth online and then several days of the week in person. More and more people are preferring in person now, but I will say COVID, like you're saying, opened up accessibility.
Yeah.
So therapists are licensed by state. And so now I could see anybody in Michigan. And, we could do this virtually. And we just had not done that before.
Right.
And so it really opened up accessibility and then reduced the stigma. Like you're saying, we are all struggling. And I think out there, whether it's social media or what have you, the therapy as a resource became more mainstream. So we're all having a tough time.
Yeah, social media stress, that's a whole nother conversation.
All right.
Part 2.
Well, and now
Different therapy session.
Yeah, and now that Ryan and I, we travel all over the place, and we have followers all over the place, and so do you. So you might have to get licenses in other states because they might just fall in
Our
love with
6
you.
listeners now want help.
We're trying. So there's different, licensing packs that are developing because now telehealth, if you think about it, I could see anybody anywhere, but we still can't.
You
Right.
cannot.
I
know.
can be anywhere. I could
Right.
be on the beaches and be seeing people in Michigan.
Right.
So we're working on. There's a lot of efforts to try to make it even more accessible, so we're not bound in that same way. Because really, the landscape's very different now
It
since
is.
COVID.
That's great.
It's changed
Yeah.
everything in some really actually good ways.
Yeah.
So
Do you find, though, that some people, and I'm sure I know the answer to this, but deal better with telehealth versus being in person, or they're more open, not sitting in a room talking about it, or is it the opposite?
yeah. So some couples that I see, I will only see in person. Their conflict is they're like high conflict couples where it's really hard with the screen, and I can't work with them in the same way with that barrier.
Probably missed the other nonverbal cues, like he
Yes.
keeps crossing his legs,
Right.
uncrossing them, or she keeps,
Exactly.
or you might not see it because they put their eyes only on the Zoom screen.
We have to have our cameras on in therapy. Or they might be coming in from 2 different locations. And so it's so fragmented. So there's some couples where in that assessment process, I just say, we need to meet in person if this is going to be
Would you
helpful.
travel to them, or they have to travel to you?
They typically travel to me. I'm not opposed to going to some exotic place to meet with a couple.
So that brings up an interesting question. So if you have a Michigan couple that wants to be, have therapy on a Florida beach, is that legal or not legal?
We might call that a retreat
Okay.
and go that direction.
Gotcha.
Love it.
But there are some licensing limitations if it's direct,
Yeah.
therapy work. So with doing some of the Gottman licensed workshops, it's been really fun to travel around the U.S. I have colleagues, Gottman therapists, where we partner together and present the workshop together and put it on in like a retreat fashion. So that's been really fun to go and be able to do that all over.
Because I'm all in for a resort customer.
All I need is a handful
retreat,
of couples, Ryan, and we're making it
couple retreat.
happen.
Well, you're
Just
going
like
to
the
have a whole
movie.
bunch right here, just right here.
We have 3 down.
Yep.
Awesome.
Times 2.
That's really fun because the workshops and the retreats, the format, it's like 2 days. It's mini presentations and then hands-on with your partner practicing, and it's experiential in that way.
Not that
And
kind of
then-
hands-on, Joe.
Damn it.
I was waiting on
I should have
the.
defined that.
I was
more
waiting on your
clearly.
sound effect, brrr, or whatever.
Yes. And then the therapists, the presenters round and assist and help. So it's really a wonderful experience.
I found it so interesting. So I read the start of your intro that you shared with us, and then I went to the Gottman Institute so I would better understand that and hopefully translate some of the stuff that you told us about in your information. Yeah. And I started reading, like I'm clicking on what, and I landed on the workshop. And I was like, oh, this workshop sounds really cool. And then I go back to your stuff and I'm like, oh, how cool you run the workshop. Like, I think that's really neat. Like, and it seems like the wide range of couples you likely experience in there are, it's probably really neat to do. And you don't have to share in front of everybody in a
Not
big
at
group
all.
and you
No.
can have that private.
It's very private. It's respectful of each couple's process. There's no expectation or requirement to publicly share about anything in your relationship.
Yeah.
We have this thing when we present. If you're going to say something about your own relationship in the group, we need a thumbs up from both partners.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we need that
Hey,
for
the other
consent.
night, it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
I know how that is. Joe and I have that relationship on the podcast.
You have your signals.
Yeah.
We do.
And we might need couples therapy too.
We should.
Well, that is
At
a
the
form
log
of
cabin.
couples work. Yes.
it?
At the log cabin.
on location.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a good
Or
question.
Punta Cana, whatever.
I know.
Yes.
do you ever find somebody entering couples like as friends?
Yeah,
as
so
not life
that's
partners.
that's called dyadic work. So parent-child, friendships, business partners.
Wow.
So-
Ooh, I could see that.
Yeah. So a lot of the concepts, the theory of what makes a happy, stable relationship really applies very well if we adapt it a little bit to a business partnership, a parent-child relationship, friendships. And so, that's called dyadic work. It's a different form of, we could call it couples work, but not an intimate
I
couple.
mean, it makes sense.
It does.
yeah.
I mean, we love each other. I think I'm putting words in your mouth, but I love
I
him.
thought we talked about that earlier.
No.
I can speak for myself, Joe.
We love each other, but we need counseling. We fight like cats and dogs. We fight like brother sister. It's
It's a
hilarious.
brother-sister
brother
relationship.
sister.
yeah.
That's another
It's
dyad.
hilarious.
Yeah. Yes.
Definitely
I mean-
love each other.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do. But oh my gosh, can we fight? And I'm like, wow.
Well, do you know every relationship has its own set of problems?
That makes sense.
No matter who you're with, who you're paired up with, you're
We have
going to have your
99
set of problems.
problems.
I'm not one
And
of them.
she's not.
I'm always
Right.
a problem.
Yeah.
No,
All right. Where we
See,
at?
I was a little late on that one.
you were. You were. It's okay. I still love you.
Well, we're hitting an hour.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
went so
are you
fast,
kidding?
and we didn't even
Sam,
get to all of the
we did
topics.
not.
We're going to have to do this again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what is the name of your practice?
My practice does not have its own name. It's
Okay.
just me. So, yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
How do we
so-
find you? How would, if somebody was listening
Yes.
in wherever in Michigan and they said, I love her. I think she could help me. How do we find you?
You can Google me, Kristen Kuiper Therapy.
Kristen Kuiper.
Yeah.
How do you spell Kuiper?
Kuiper, and the Kristen is with eyes.
Let's go Dutch.
K-R-I-S-T-I-N. Yes.
We'll put that on our socials.
yes,
We
for
will.
you.
We
And
Yes, we will.
my website is vibrantrelationship.com. That's another way to contact me. I have not used social media, and I really
Good for
haven't
you.
Probably a good thing.
wanted to. It's so much to keep up with, and I
Yes.
haven't needed to do that.
Yeah.
I would want to do that for its own function, like my own voice out there, but not in terms of keeping up with for my own practice marketing or
It
anything
is
like that.
way too much work, but we got to do a better job at that ourselves.
Yeah,
Gotta
we
do
suck.
what you do.
Yeah, I have colleagues who do that and love it, or like are challenged by it and enjoy that part, but I don't.
We tried to do the whiskey advent calendar.
Epic fail.
Epic fail. Thea was reliable.
She was.
Joe and I were half-ass at best.
We were.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
We made some amazing videos, but
We
we just
did.
didn't
I
publish them.
called it at the beginning. It was going to be a period of growth. Everybody's growth is measured differently. You made the videos.
We learned.
It was
We
good.
We had a
Learned.
session with Eli to learn because we had
Yeah, I
We
learned
had
a
to
lot.
rely-
we had to rely on the generation that knows.
Sounds like a success.
Anyway, well, Kristen, thank you so much for joining us, and thank
Yes.
you for most importantly, like bringing love to the world. Like
Oh,
that is
thank you
so
so much.
amazing.
This has been an
Wonderful.
honor. Appreciate
Yeah.
the invitation.
For us, thank you.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. You can follow us on Instagram at Rye Guy Whiskey GR.
Whiskey Thea.
Joe the Experience on Instagram.
Thanks again for listening, and we're going to definitely pick this conversation up again in the future. Thank you.
Continue. Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.